Hello, my name's Malcolm Kelly and I live in Dundee on the east coast of Scotland, and I'd like to welcome you to this course, Route to Success, and thank you for investing in the course. Now, the course itself is largely based on the philosophy of wealth accumulation developed by Napoleon Hill back in 1937 in his classic book Think and Grow Rich. Forbes magazine back in 2011 stated that 70 million copies of that book had been sold since it was first published. Which is enough for 1% of the population of the planet to have a copy each. Now, the background of the book and the work that Napoleon Hill developed was he was, as a young journalist, he was interviewing some of the wealthiest people in the US to find out what were the principles of success. And in one of his early interviews, he actually got a hold of Andrew Carnegie, who was, again, one of the wealthiest people on the planet at that point, the steel magnate, big philanthropist. And in the conversation or the interview, Andrew Carnegie tasked Hill to not just look at the principles of success, but also to look at the principles of failure. He felt there was a big lack in the education system that needed promoting, that success and failure went hand in hand, and really they should look at the whole work as a whole. So Napoleon Hill took that on that task, and as Andrew Carnegie said, it would take him years to do that, and in effect it took him 22 years, and in the process he interviewed 50 of the wealthiest people in the US, from presidents to inventors to steel magnates and oil men, railway barons. But he also interviewed 25,000 other people who were less successful or were not successful, to pull out the principles for the failure aspect of wealth accumulation. Now, speaking for myself, I've read Think and Grow Rich a few times over the decades, but it's really only over the last few months that I've dedicated to study and apply the principles, as much for necessity as anything else. I should state up front that I'm not a wealthy man, never have been, and I've never been in an environment or a background of wealth, and I feel at this point that should change. And I think that's really maybe the advantage I have in putting out this course, in that I've looked at the various principles, I've seen some of the hurdles, the setbacks, the mindset changes that have to apply, and also taking a fresh look at Think and Grow Rich. Many commentators have missed one or two things that are extremely important, and I would even say that Napoleon Hill kind of missed a trick to include one principle that he actually could have been used at the very beginning of the laying out of the 13 principles. But he put in the tail end of his book a chapter entitled Outwit the Six Ghosts of Fear, and he emphasised the importance, the crucial nature of dealing with fears before you could even think about applying any of the other principles. So I've basically taken that and turned it into a principle and put it at the very head of this course, because I've known for myself the issues that can throw up. I mean, it doesn't matter if you think you're quite a positive person. I think there's an awful lot of mindset issues that will be thrown up with going through this work and using the resources that are available within Think and Grow Rich and various other resources that I've managed to pull together as well. So I feel I'm probably similar to yourself in terms of having now a burning desire to have wealth in my life. And I'll just show a quote from Napoleon Hill as to the purpose of his book, which is matched by my purpose in presenting you with this course. So the purpose of Think and Grow Rich, quote, is to present to all who want the knowledge the most dependable philosophy through which individuals may accumulate riches in whatever amounts they desire, end quote. Napoleon Hill. So the purpose of this course, as stated, is to find out where your wealth is and how to get it, largely. Now, the resources for the course, the course is broken down into 16 parts. Start with this introduction, 14 modules based on the 13 principles plus the one to do with fear, and finishing with the conclusion. There'll be a short video for each of the modules. There'll be a short audio with the notes taken from the specific chapter relating to that module from Think and Grow Rich. There will also be a range of PDF documents giving some notes, some graphics, and also exercises that there are quite a few exercises from within Think and Grow Rich that you'll be able to apply, as well as a few other exercises I've included for various that kind of strengthen certain parts of the principles, and at the end of each module I will give you action steps to take, which will include some of those exercises and some readings and some listening to audio materials, and also suggest one or two resources that would be worth adding in to buy for your own behalf. And on that point, I would suggest getting yourself a copy of Think and Grow Rich with the 1937 version. I think there was another one produced in 1960. I haven't looked at that, to be honest. There was a mistake apparently on the part of the publishers of the first edition that they didn't follow up on the copyright aspects, and it may well be that there's enough change in the second volume to warrant buying a copy of that. But for our purposes, if you stick to the 1937 edition, you won't go wrong, and it'll give you a better sense of the kind of stories attached to how Napoleon Hill pulled out those various principles. As long as you don't mind the 1937 speak, as it were, there's a lot of references to men and males as opposed to females and women who it sounds like largely were not that included into his research, which is kind of a sign of the times as much as anything else. The wealthiest people tended to be men at that point, although I'm sure there were unreported wealthy females as well, but Napoleon Hill doesn't really kind of tackle that aspect, so it's you can pay heed to that and to your own behalf. So within the action steps, I would like you to read and listen to the aims of the course. I've included separate pieces to give you a detailed breakdown as to kind of where the course aims to benefit you, and rather than speaking to you as a list of bullet points in video, I've produced those as separate pieces. There's also a reading and an audio that you can either listen to or read, which is a publisher's preface. One of the more recent digital copies had a very interesting, again, breaking down the benefits and the purpose of the philosophy of wealth accumulation, which is worth having paying heed to. I've also included a piece by Brian Tracy. He's a salesman extraordinaire and coaching guru, if you like, but he produced a short white paper called 5 Reasons Why Most Don't Become Wealthy, and it's only a few pages, and I've produced one or two pages of notes on that, but it's really quite important, I think, to have a good read through that, because there are some very specific reasons for why most people don't actually accumulate wealth, and some of them are fairly simple reasons, but they're extremely important. And some of them allude a little to some of the principles that Napoleon Hill included in his work, but I think it's worth highlighting some of the sort of 5 basic points that Brian Tracy managed to find from research that others had done, and pulled it together in a little white paper, which is worth getting a hold of as well. It's something about 4 or 5 pages, I think, and you can find that at briantracy.com. It's a PDF document. And as I stated earlier, it's worth getting a hold of a copy of Think and Grow Rich. It's not essential for this course, but it gives you a bit of a broader taste and a bit more of the storytelling in the various, some of the homilies and kind of, cliches, if you like, as well, but they're quite worth the read. And if you could also read the chapter on, if you do get a copy of Think and Grow Rich, the chapter on Outwit the 6 Ghosts of Fear, because that's what the next module will be, and it'd be worth having a read of that before you do so. Okay, see you in the next module.